What's up, guys? Episode 34, Blacklisted Voice. Matt and I here, just talking about some new things we're trying and training with people. Matt just recently got done with the Active Life. Man, what do they call their first one?
I think it's a seminar.
Yeah, just a seminar, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he and I both took that. What was it, back in March and April?
I think so.
Yeah. And so you're starting to incorporate some of the stuff that you learned from that seminar into your classes and some of the athletes that you're using, correct?
Yep.
What specifically are you starting to incorporate in there?
There's I like the language that they use and the approach with that, and for helping to convey and communicate with athletes. But beyond that, they do a nice job with some strength balance work, and I think that's what's been the most applicable to the programs.
Yeah. So going back to the communication, like what do they do differently than like some of the stuff you've done in the past?
It's tough to like pinpoint it.
Yeah. Have you noticed like any new verbiage that you're like throwing out since then, or is it like
it's I think that there's a different presence with just having that extra knowledge.
Okay, so almost like it's almost like more of like a confidence that you can convey things with.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Okay, interesting. I don't know if I got that out of the seminar, but that's interesting to that you kind of chat about that, because everyone's gonna have like different takeaways from a seminar, you know?
Yeah.
So like interesting to hear that takeaway. Did you feel like that was like beforehand, was it like hard for you to communicate like maybe technical aspects to like certain clients?
I think it was tough to communicate like the value of certain things, and to help convey like, okay, like you've had this back tweak going on, like how can, like, I know how to help you, but like conveying to them like, okay, I know how to like help build some midline strength so that we're decreasing the chances of something so that we're moving better. Yeah.
Okay, so almost like foreshadowing what the work they're doing is gonna like help them with later on down the road.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool, and that's helped out a lot. You think in like just in group classes in general, because I know a lot of people tend to
in group classes and with messaging with clients, just like it's tough to put my finger on it, but like there's a little bit of the element of it in the back of my mind, and I feel like I just do a little bit better job.
Yeah, it's always interesting like coming away from seminars too, because you're always like so amped and ready to go, and like you're like that little like you're saying, like that little bit of information is just like floating in the back of your head, and you're like, I don't know, you just like come away so refreshed from seminars sometimes.
Yeah.
Like it's like the one seminar is going to change the client's world or something like that. That's why we all got our level 1, right?
Yeah.
That's cool. So what precisely are you doing with some of the, can you like kind of give a quick breakdown of some of the strength balance stuff that like they talked about in the seminar?
So
with that,
nothing groundbreaking as far as like back squat to deadlift to front squat ratios. But incorporating the single leg work. I hadn't seen the percentage on single leg work before. So having that and being able to give them a percentage or have an expected number of reps or an expected or a way to relate those to better understand. Because like, yeah, you can test left to right in balance, but if somebody's step ups or single leg deadlifts are like lagging behind, even though they might be even, that's some low hanging fruit. And then also with the overhead work, like the upright row to pull-ups.
Yeah. So what are the ratios that you were looking for there in those, Ian?
So the whatever the rep number is, there's percentages that you want to see the relationship between.
Yeah, I think it's like the step ups like 30% for 10 reps or something like that of your front squat max.
I think it's back squat because I think squat. For
33 front rack step up is 33% of your deadlift max.
It was we ended up using, so for the classes I had them test back squat and then and then we used 41% of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew the literature wasn't 41%, but I knew I used 41%. Yeah. So what are you going to do like with the classes based off of those numbers then? Like how are you going to start incorporating that into your program? So first off was just this goes to the communication. This is actually a really good example of like being like, so it's like you've seen it plenty of times where you're like, yeah, you got a left to right in balance. Single leg work is going to help you more than squatting. Like, keep shifting and pushing off this one leg, but like being able to be like, hey, we're going to test, and if you're in this single leg camp, we're probably going to be able to get stronger and you're going to feel better if we go through a single leg progression. So just being able to communicate the value of that single leg work, that was something that I had struggled with, communicating the value of these things. I'm like, yes, this is going to help you. I don't know how to convince you that it's going to help you.
Yeah. It's tough because it's like sometimes like when you first like my thought of the like active life seminar was like this would be a perfect thing for people to go to after their L1. Like literally weekend 1 was like CrossFit level 1, weekend 2 is like active life seminar level 1. They have like a couple different levels of it, and like you would start out with such a better knowledge base going into classes and like could address so many different issues heading into classes that like I guess when you and I were growing up in the coaching industry, it took like years for that knowledge to start to like populate to kind of like the average class level coach, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Like, it wasn't until like 2016 that I started realizing like, oh, like I don't move well, you know? Well, I knew that before 2016. Better ways to fix it than just banded distractions.
And on that note then, so with classes, this just finished up, I think week 6 of it. And so there's 2 for a squat day. There's 2 tracks. One's traditional back squat. The other one is half the time it's a step up variation, half the time it's a split squat variation. And it's like, okay, depending on what you saw in your testing, if you're lagging behind in the step ups, we're going with that single leg variation. And if you saw left to right in balance, this is how we're adjusting the reps to help level them out. So, and then similarly with the upper body, with pull-ups and upright rows, if the upright rows were what's lagging, and that's I think the upright row has gotten a bad rap because when it's done poorly, yeah, you're gonna not put the shoulder in a great position. But when it's done well, it has a lot of application. It can really help with the strength balance and help those shoulders feel good. So
Yeah.
I mean that's been the argument I think for years of like don't do upright rows.
Yeah.
But then like if you think about it in the same context of like that's the same argument people used to say don't snatch or don't do it
Right.
clean, like is because like yeah, if it's done poorly, yeah, you're probably gonna jack yourself up. But if it's done correctly and in the right way, it's a super powerful tool.
Right. Yeah. So like that actually kind of brings me to one of the things that I've been using a lot more in my training and with some of my athletes, and it's just like straight up bodybuilding protocols with people. I think like again with our kind of generation, or maybe even like prior athletes that have come over into the sport, they have this huge foundation of like hypertrophy usually, and some sort of like maybe collegiate lifting program where, you know, they're hitting sets of 10, sets of 12, sets of 15, and just like building this huge foundation. But I think a lot of people that are starting to get into this sport now are starting, you know, from age 12 up, and they're not getting that foundation of bodybuilding. And so when they get into, you know, their 2021s, they're like, man, I haven't gotten stronger in 4 years. And it's like, well, you didn't lay a base of bicep curls and tricep extensions and split squats and banded hamstring curls and leg extensions. And so that's actually one thing that I've started to do a lot more of in my athletes training, is putting in just straight up basic bodybuilding stuff. And for females, I actually am starting to leave it in there like year round now. And it's been doing wonders for their upper body pressing. Got a lot of females that are doing pretty well with upper body pressing and pulling right now, just leaving that in year round. And people are just like straight up getting stronger, because when you do sets of 10 strict dumbbell presses tends to drive your other overhead metrics up. So yeah, so the dumbbell high pull, sick movement.
Yeah,
But
and especially now that we're entering to the off season, like this is the time to hammer all that bodybuilding.
Yep. Yeah, I'm like in a weird spot right now because I have a lot of individuals that are like, this doesn't happen. Well, I guess it's been a full year since we've had a full season. So I guess like maybe I'm just like not remembering very well. But like I'm in a weird spot where you know, quarterfinals happened so quickly after the Open. I was kind of, and it was like some people's seasons ended literally a month after, or like right after the Open. Some people literally a month after quarterfinals, and now we have a couple teams going to semifinals. So it's like everyone's almost in like this different stage of their season right now. Like we have some people that are just coming off of their off season and are starting to like gear up and ramp up into training really hard. And then we have people who are still just kind of like teetering on that off season cycle. And then we have people who are still in like straight up full training mode. So this is like, I think this is one of the first times where I've had this much overlap in designs. And it's actually kind of fun to see like, it's a little bit difficult flipping from individual to individual. So I think I have them organized right now where it's all like all the semis are on one day, and then like you know, health clients on another day, and then like off season are like on another day spread out over 2 weeks. And I think that just kind of auto populated that way. But it's kind of interesting to see, like now you're truly getting to see like the differences between each one. A little bit more like closer together, because for the most part, like it was like back in the day, it was get done with the Open and pretty much everybody's in an off season at that point in time. Maybe you have like 3 or 4 people that are training for regionals. Maybe you have one person that goes to the games. But this is like the density of individuals that went to quarterfinals and now semifinals is a lot greater. So you have like a little bit more sample size of each thing. To program for. So it's kind of cool to see like all of them overlapping and the differences in all of them overlapping right now.
Yeah, you used to have like a 3-month block of like, okay, we're going to put you on like this mini cycle because you finished the open, and then we're getting into, and then after regionals, that's when everybody else is going to kind of pick up, and we'll get everybody going together from that point on. But now that it's a month apart, like you just got waterfall style of like, okay, you're in the middle of your cycle. We can't wait for the next leg.
Right. Yeah. So it's like, that's kind of like a cool thing to see. And like how everybody's like different. I've actually got one female masters athlete who I'm putting through like a pretty extensive like off-season jumping cycle. And that's kind of like interesting to see her leg strength is actually improving significantly, but we're also doing a lot of oblique work. So I can't say that that is the direct carryover to that. But things like her double unders are starting to improve a little bit more. And it looks like she's able to kind of like get out of the bottom of her squat a little bit faster. This will actually be, I think we're actually talking about that on our like Monday movement videos tomorrow. Yeah, I guess this gets released.
So with the bounding work, are you like working on like some stiffness for that recoiling, or?
No, actually it's mostly just like max vertical jumps, and then we're trying to get her hips to move a little bit better, so like lateral jumping also.
Okay.
So like skater hops are one thing, so she can kind of like sit into that a little bit better, and kind of feel a little bit of tension in like a catch and almost like explosion out of that kind of like that deep hip. I guess what would that be, like a little bit of internal rotation and external rotation on the hip? Yeah. So like some explosion out of that side to side. And then we're doing a lot of like single leg vertical jumps, and then rear foot elevated split squat jumps, which you actually told me about, I think like last month or something like that. So
yeah, I mean that sounds like it makes a lot of sense for carrying over to that squat.
Yeah. And then I can't remember the name of these things, but basically like split jumps on a plyo box. It took me like 10 minutes to find a fucking YouTube video for it. This is where I wish I had equipment in my house, like in my garage, where I could just go out and fucking film a video really quick.
Yeah, there's times where I'll spend 5 minutes in the gym searching for something, and then be like, all right, I'm going to video this. And like with technology nowadays, you knock it out in a minute. It takes 30 seconds to video, 30 seconds to upload the video.
You're like so defiant. No, I am going to find a YouTube video of this. Fuck filming this on my own.
You'll probably get it exactly how you want, explain it how you want, and it will be the right variation of that movement.
So dumb. But yeah, that was kind of like something that I'm playing around with a little bit more this off season. And the actually one of the other things I'm doing that I'm kind of curious to see transfers over is I'm actually putting like poles and mostly poles, some lifts after the conditioning piece. So they might have like a strength work, and then maybe some sort of like bodybuilding piece. So like when I say strength work, like it might be snatching or squatting, and then some sort of like bodybuilding piece. So maybe they're doing like sissy squats or dumbbell hamstring curls or something like that. A little bit of hypertrophy work. Then they'll have a conditioning piece. And then after the conditioning piece, I'll actually put some lift or pulls in there. Just the like kind of the idea behind it is like most of the time in the sport, you're lifting fatigued in some way, shape, or form. So maybe it's like in the middle of the competition, or maybe it is after like a work or after a conditioning piece. You're like have to build to a max. So like it's getting the body to move more efficiently while fatigued, because that's a huge aspect of the sport. If you can move the bar well while you're under fatigue, you're going to be able to move, you know, much heavier loads under whatever circumstance the sport is testing at the time.
Yeah.
And then it's also just getting them used to like firing that central nervous system really hard post being super fatigued. So I think for some people too, it's actually going to be like, depending on the athlete, some actual like true strength work for them too. And we had kind of chatted about this like concept maybe a couple of years ago, where like the last thing in the gym is like, or the adaptation you experience is like the last thing you do leaving the gym.
Yeah.
So like somebody's needing to put in strength work, having them do technical pulls under fatigue might give them, you know, an added strength bonus leaving the gym.
Yeah.
So, but again, that's all kind of dependent on whatever the client's needs are, I should say.
Are you so are you going to start with pulls right now, and then like as it progresses build to the full lift, or just keep it as pulls for a while?
I think because like you can overload the pull, right? Like you can get a pull up to 105, 110%. So I honestly think like if you're just overloading the pull, it would probably be better for at least like 6 to 8 months before they're entering any sort of competition setting to just hit overloaded pulls. And then when it comes closer to competition time, then maybe you're refining like the actual technique of it, if that makes sense. And like really feeling under fatigue. But like honestly, like if your issue in like the clean is to pull off, like it's hard pulling off the ground, like, and like I'll use myself for an example. Like the pull off the ground was always it felt like I was pulling a house off the ground. But if I caught it, I was standing it up. Like no question, I was standing it up. So like if I literally had just worked pulls back in the day, fatigued, like I probably wouldn't need to do the full lifts leading into competition, if that makes sense. So
at this moment in time, I think I'm the opposite. Like I'm like, I'd rather power clean it and not have to worry about like standing it up or anything, because like that standing up's going to be dicey, because my absolute strength work has been super deprioritized. So like,
yeah. So you would almost have to do more like almost if like you were to put on like a light external load, like if you loaded up a weight vest to like 40 pounds or something like that, and then did like maybe some unilateral plyometric work after your sessions or your conditioning.
Yeah.
Not that we actually train anymore, but
I've strung together 3 days this week.
Oh yeah, that's good.
I know.
I'm at a solid 2 supersets on Monday, and then I did a full session Tuesday.
Heck yeah.
Yep, getting there. But yeah, that was one thing that I am curious to see how it plays out. I'm specifically using it with one athlete, so I'm kind of curious to see how it plays out. The other thing that I think might happen with that is like an overload of the central nervous system, so getting them to move their lifts faster when they have a non-fatigued central nervous system. So, that's, I guess, subjective data. So,
yeah.
I mean, I guess you can do 2 of their lifts, but.
Are you so with overloading that CNS at the end of the sessions? Are you worried about like any extra CNS fatigue going on, or are you like, it's the off season, we're doing more bodybuilding protocol, CNS is lower demand at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, with all that stuff, I kind of just like pay attention like to what the athlete is telling me, you know? Because I like, traditionally I'll take like every 4th week is like a deload week. But then I'll just pay attention to what the athlete's saying, like in their comments and stuff like that, like what their interactions are like, what they look like in their videos. So that like it's to the point where it's like, oh wow, you look like a fucking sloth. Like let's pull this back a little bit here. Then but I mean, I think you can see central nervous system fatigue, like from a visual standpoint, pretty easily in athletes. And like when they don't have the pop, like they don't have the pop, and you know it's like time to like, okay, we need to, like, sometimes you want that, but like if it's like, wow, this has been like, you know, 14 training sessions and you still haven't like looked good lifting, like let's pull it back for a week here, you know. So that's kind of, I guess that's kind of what I'm like more using as guidance for that, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. That's yeah, that's the athlete focused approach.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, there definitely could be more central nervous system fatigue for sure. But yeah, I'm just like, I'll just stay monitored on that with individuals and just kind of see what ends up happening with them on that. So, but yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how that goes. And then this, like the other thing I'm trying to focus on in this off season is, in the off season specifically, get more directed with the training, and the sessions just being as minimal as possible with as much focus on what I'm trying to get out of the session versus adding in a bunch of fluff, which you, in my opinion, need for CrossFit because there is a fuckload of shit that you have to do in the sport. But I think that in the off season, it'll be a little bit better to direct the training a little bit more, than trying to make sure you're good on everything all the time, if that makes sense. And the off season is like 2 months. So it's not like you're taking 6 months off of trying to get like refine certain aspects of the sport. Like you're spending 2 months probably trying to do that. And then you're starting to like slowly add in that quote unquote fluff again, if that makes sense.
So are you trying to, with that, are you trying to have them spend less time in the gym, or is it directed? And then like, if you have extra time, like, all right, we're just going to get a little bit more aerobic base working, or some easy cyclical work or something like that.
Yeah. So I actually had this thought the other day, like people's deload weeks in this sport should be like, literally you go into the gym like 3 or 4 times in the deload week, unless you have like, you're like 12 sessions or 18 sessions throughout the week or something like that, then maybe to cut it down to like 9 sessions or something like that. But I think if you can actually get, because this sport's so stressful, and like, even if you go into the gym, you find stupid shit to do, you know. You're like, oh, I'm going to fucking lay on this lacrosse ball and get super amped up while I'm watching everybody else do the class. And like, you end up being in the gym for like 2.5, 3 hours anyway, when you go in with like maybe 45, 60 minutes of work. So I'm almost thinking about seeing if people would be cool doing like 4 days or 3 days on their deload weeks. And then like piecing out after that. Just not heading into the gym as much. But sorry, that was a tangent. If I were to fill things in for that individual, it'd probably be more aerobic work. But again, it just kind of depends on what that individual needs, you know? Like, do they need more aerobic work? Do they need more strength work? Do they need more mobilization and positional work? Like, it's kind of just like, you got to figure out what that client needs specifically if you are trying to fill some things in the off season, and then like add that type of quote unquote fluff to the training. You know.
Yeah, I guess I meant like you were still checking all the boxes for what the athlete needs, and then it's just like, okay, we're checking all the boxes in 45 minutes. Normally your training sessions are 90 minutes. Like, yeah. Do we just hit some like 60, 70% cyclical work because I don't think you can have too big of an aerobic base.
Yeah, definitely not. Yeah. I guess if there is extra time, and like we are checking things off, like I still think like again, we're not taking all the volume away from the sport. And like, if you do have 2.5, 3 hour training sessions, like in your season, like you're more refined training session is probably going to look closer to 90 minutes and like, if you have 3 hours in the gym, but you're just focused in for 90 minutes, like, let's say there's 90 minutes of total work, you'll be able to take a little bit more time in between, like maybe sip your intra workout shake a little bit more, reintroduce some carb into the system, and maybe you can hit that next, like whatever next training implement you're doing with a little bit more intensity, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like it'll probably end up being like 90 minutes of total work, which is, I think, probably a good amount of time to be in the gym. And then if we need to add in anything else, like maybe they come in for an extra session or something like that. And then start to expand that out closer to 3 hours, if that makes sense. But like, yeah, if there is extra work or extra time, like the aerobic base can always be built bigger. Always. So, yep. Let's see. Oh yeah. And then, so like going back to, what I'm doing with like the kind of like off season, like transferring out of off season and like people in season. So like with the team, I'm actually trying something like this out where, with their lifting sessions, we're giving them like strength speed work to warm up. So that might look like one snatch every 30 seconds for 20 reps at 50% of your 1RM or something like that, or 40% of your 1RM. So that's like their quote unquote warm up or primer for their like lifting pieces. Then it'll go into like some sort of moderate weight. So now you're getting a little bit of barbell cycling, maybe some strength speed endurance work. Maybe we do that in EMOM format every 2 minutes or something like that. And then at the end, we'll have them take some heavier lifts again. So like kind of going back to the idea of like, yeah, there's some reintroduced fatigue. Now you're trying to lift heavy under fatigue again. But this also, like, for whatever reason, CrossFitters tend to lift a little bit better under fatigue. So like get them not thinking right away in their lifting session, like put them on the clock, get them not thinking, make them start taking lifts, then give them a little bit more of a technical component where they have like this complex where like they're still like, whoa, fuck, I'm under a ton of tension right now. Then throw them after their central nervous system has been really warmed up, they're really like fired, ready to go, then throw them into their heavier lifts. I think you'll end up seeing people hit a little bit heavier lifts for their strength work. And you're touching like 3 different components of the sport at the same time. So, well, 4 if you want to count lifting under fatigue too.
Yeah, you jumped into what I was going to ask about, like the CrossFitters lifting better under fatigue and stuff. So I completely agree with that. And they get into a better flow. And I think getting that sweat in and I think the aerobic system helps them a lot with those bigger lifts and really moving and sweating and a lot of lifts in. Yeah.
So what do you think, like specifically, because like you've had some experience with developing an aerobic system with Olympic weightlifters, like what do you think that is, like the driving factor behind that?
This is pure conjecture at this point. One idea is that like instead of sitting around and like getting on that machine, like you're a lot more focused on the session. So you're not like dicking around on your phone. You're not doing this, that, or the other thing. You're probably thinking about the one thing of your lift that you want to do better. Yeah. And then when it comes time to lift, you're just lifting. So I think it sets up it sets up like a flow state a lot better for lifters because I mean, you can get in your head nasty.
Yeah.
And then I think there's a little bit of a physiological component, but I'm not going to try and guess as to what the mechanism is.
Okay. That's fair. Man, I don't know. Take a guess. Fuck it. All speculation at this point in time. Don't take this for verbatim. If you guys are still listening.
I'm not going to throw anything out there.
Yeah. I mean, the sport in and of itself is like an aerobic system based sport for the most part. Like your ability to recover between workouts, in between sets, in between lifts, in between your sets in workouts. Like it's an aerobic driven sport. So like if you are developing your aerobic system, like you would assume that your ability to manage more volume would increase you would in theory, but yeah. So you did that with like Olympic weightlifters too though, correct?
A little bit, just a little bit.
Yeah. It probably wasn't like if you were to make a spectrum, like you probably wasn't as far on the aerobic system spectrum as you would with a CrossFitter.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Right on.
Yeah. With my first Olympic lifting meet, I asked if I could do like a Metcon and then run out on the platform. Because I just PR'd my clean and jerk by doing 15.1, and I PR'd it on 15.1 part B.
Yeah.
Which was like, no, you're not embarrassing me like that.
You're like, what? All these weightlifting people aren't cool anyway, so we're good. Joke. No offense to weightlifting individuals or coaches. Yeah. I've always wondered that, like, if there was anyone in the sport who would maybe do a little bit, like in the sport of weightlifting, like would maybe do a little bit better if they like hit an EMOM as like part of their warm up. So like when I was introduced to weightlifting in like the weightlifting world, it was like you're taking 5 lifts at 60%, you're taking 4 lifts at 70%, 3 at 80, like 1 at 5 pounds under your opener.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? I get like 4 lifts or like 10 lifts before I go out on the platform? Like my shoulders still hurt. I can still feel these. But yeah.
I think having an Olympic lifting coach in tune with like what kind of volume their athletes used to, especially if they have that CrossFit background, to be like, all right, we're gonna do a 15-minute EMOM leading into this sucker, and
yeah. Would you ever do that for one of your athletes?
One area is going to think you're crazy, but whatever.
So would you ever do that with one of your athletes then?
I have not tried that. I've had that done to me though, and that was a much better approach than me sitting around for like 3 minutes between lifts.
Interesting. How would you prep that for somebody then? Like if you knew that you were going to try it at a competition?
Well, part of it is it's super nerve-wracking to try and time the EMOM because like the cards are getting shuffled and like how long and is somebody going to miss? So like there's a gamble piece behind it. But I mean with that EMOM style for the same reasons of the aerobic setting, just like that flow state, and just getting a lot more reps in because CrossFitters can handle a lot more reps.
Right. Would you almost take it though at like almost like an EMOM at like 70% or something like that, and then be like, okay, now you're 6 spots out from lifting, let's start or like 10 spots out or whatever, like now start building?
That's a good idea. I haven't tried that, but yeah, that's a solid approach.
I mean, I know cards get shuffled a lot, so like you were saying, so it'd be like there would still probably be a gamble aspect to it, you know. But I
Yeah.
feel like instead of like building every minute on the minute, like just hitting a bunch of reps at like your 70% might be like a better, and then be like, okay, I know at this amount of time, it's approximately this amount until you go. Let's just have you start building when you're 6 people away or 5 people away or whatever, up to like 5 pounds under your opener or whatever.
Yeah. That's some good food for thought there.
Yeah. Be interesting to see. I just, yeah, like, especially with CrossFitters, like, they just get better sweating, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Such a weird, like, that's such a weird concept. So, kind of, I don't know. It's just like, I mean, if it were successful, you would think somebody in the weightlifting world would have figured that out by now, you know? But it might be successful for a certain type of, maybe the athlete that is successful for hasn't been implemented yet, so you don't see them on the big stage.
Yeah, I mean, I think the form of what you were saying, and it might just, like, elite Olympic lifters are a different type of human being.
Yeah, for sure.
Different type of human being than what your solid CrossFitters are.
Yeah,
So
yeah. The physiology is quite a bit different. But it would be, yeah, I don't know. It'd just be interesting if that was like unlocked a new athlete that could approach like the Olympic lifting sport and have some success at like a relatively high level, you know? Because like we're in the point of CrossFit where we're like finding out like, okay, we're understanding how to train like powerful athletes a little bit better, and we're understanding how to like put strength on more enduring type athletes. So it's like, you know, you're starting to like mix the spectrums a little bit. So like maybe there is an athlete who's like, you know, kind of bubble on that strength side, and they just needed like a better protocol at an event to feel warm going out onto the platform, you know, so that they could kind of like compete at a higher level, you know. Probably not. That was probably all bullshit, but
I think whatever gets the athlete into the flow state the best.
Right.
At that caliber, getting into that kind of a place, and athletes that have a tough time doing it, that might be worth experimenting with.
Yeah. Huh. Well, I don't have any weightlifters, but if you do experiment with that, let me know how it goes. Maybe we can do another podcast on that. I guess last thing that I'm trying to, or a couple last things, like this one's like pretty basic, but I'm just trying to bring some of the volume building that you do experience in the off season back into more of an EMOM format, and just straight linear progression and try and get a little bit more. This might be a little bit more new, is getting a little bit more technical and nuanced with it to the athlete specific. So like, you know, every minute on the minute for 9 minutes, we're going to do like, our goal is to get up to 10 and do 6 toes to bar for 10 minutes. So maybe you start out like with 8 minutes and you're doing 5 every minute on the minute. Then the next week we build out to 9, then we build out to 10. Then maybe when we're at 10 by 5, minutes 1 through 5 are 6 toes to bar a minute. Minutes 6 through 10 are 5 toes to bar. So just extending the amount of time that you're doing the volume progression essentially, but dialing in kind of where that athlete is specifically to the volume. I'm doing that with a master's athlete right now, and they've had some pretty good success developing better capacity inside of workouts, just doing a straight linear progression of volume on specific movements. So and then the last thing I'm starting to kind of like try and throw in here a little bit more is just testers. I've kind of chatted about this in the past with some people. I don't know if I've ever mentioned on the podcast, but I'm not super big on like testing something and then testing something, that same thing again at the end of the cycle to see if it worked. I think there's too many variables inside of training, inside of life, and like, you know, if that athlete does happen to do worse on said tester, like the emotional distress that can come from that, I just don't think is worth it. So again, like you do get a big confidence boost. So like if you're watching their programming and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I know this person's going to fucking PR this. Let's give it to them. Then I'll probably do it. But what I'm trying to do now is just give testers and like little testers. So like maybe 20 muscle ups for time, or MRAP unbroken muscle ups, or MRAP unbroken strict handstand push-ups, or 25 burpee box jump overs, or 50 burpee box jump overs, and put that at the end of their sessions, just to give them a little bit more of a reference point of where they're at with certain things. So like movements that they'll see inside of workouts. So like, hey, you did 30 burpee box jump overs with 2 minutes rest after this workout in, 2 minutes and 30 seconds, we'll say. Your first round of burpee box jump overs is 30 in this workout. There's 3 rounds of it. This would probably be a good pace to hold for this workout. So trying to use it as a little bit more of like a reference point for people to better understand how to pace workouts and better understand kind of where they're at ability wise, if that makes sense. I'm doing that mostly with the team right now. And just giving them like little things to hit on. Because I think that's one thing that kind of hurt them in semifinals is just not, quarterfinals, sorry, is just not knowing exactly where their ability levels were yet. Now, 2 of the individuals on the team literally have been training for 3 months. So at this point in time, they just came out of retirement. So that could have something to do with it too. But I think just throwing in, some of these testers or like benchmark numbers that you'll see in workouts or traditional numbers that you'll see in workouts will just help a little bit more with kind of gauging where their ability levels are at and not coming out too hot, like out on a competition floor, or developing a better pacing strategies and knowing what certain things feel like and when you're about to redline on certain things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, to pace the best way possible, you got to know where the wheels come off.
Yeah.
You're always under the wheels come off. You don't know where that line is.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And this isn't even necessarily like wheels off like training either. Like this is like pre-fatiguing you almost, so that when you do go into the workouts or like into a competition, you're like, I know I did this with fatigue. That portion of something, let's say it's 20 muscle ups, is in the middle of this workout. This will probably be like what pace I'm trying to set on this portion of the workout, if that makes sense. So it's not even like I'm trying to get you to like redline in these testers after workouts. Like I just want you to feel it so you have an idea of like what it feels like in the middle of a workout, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think this actually touches on a post that you made recently about being a student of the sport. Like,
yeah,
you should, like, if you're trying to compete in this sport, like you should have a catalog of like all the workouts, and you should be like, okay, this workout. All right, you either you know it, or you can look it up in your notes and be like, okay, I know how it felt like. I know how I broke it up. This is how it went. Okay, this is how I'm going to attack it this time.
Yeah.
Like it's refinement.
Yeah. Like, I think I'm pretty sure Mayhem was doing this. I'm pretty sure it was Froning, but they were putting out like workout breakdowns for every like quarterfinals and like open workout. Like, you want to finish the open workout at this time, like here's the pacing, or like here's where you have to be at in the workout at specific times. And like it really just comes down to a numbers game. And so like the more data you have collected in your head or on paper or wherever, the better you're going to be able to play that numbers game. Now, not saying that CrossFit is solely a numbers game and that like you're like, oh, I want to get 10 minutes on 21.2, so I just have to be here at this point in time. Like there is a physiological capacity and mental component to it. But if you can align those components with a numbers component, you're going to be a lot more successful in the sport, because you can dial in your performance almost to the T, versus a lot of other people who are like, fuck it, go hard. I'll just see where I fall off, So
yeah, I've had one athlete in particular who like has started to like learn how to pace and plan.
yeah.
And like, I think he planned out 21.2 within 5 seconds.
Damn, let's go. That's sweet. Yeah, that's awesome. The other thing too, though, like this is something that just popped in my head, is like, it is a lot easier to do that inside of open workouts and quarterfinals workouts, because all your equipment is relatively close. When you get out onto a competition floor, it's a little bit different, because transition times come into play at that point in time. And a lot of the workouts just aren't geared necessarily towards consistent paces. There's going to be some ebb and flow to those workouts. So but again, like, you can still kind of collect some data. I think on the competition floor, it really is a lot more of like knowing how your body feels, and like when bread line is starting to kind of creep up. Well, that's interesting. I'll have to think more on that. So, but yeah, I don't know, you got anything else there?
I don't think so.
Cool. Sorry for talking so much on this one. Well, thanks for listening, guys. Hopefully that was hopefully we found something interesting in there, or some good takeaways. If you guys did like this one, if you guys don't mind following us on Instagram, if you guys are listening on Apple Podcasts, if you guys are watching on YouTube, please subscribe. We're starting to put out a little bit more content on YouTube. Our sessions specifically, we're putting videos out for those. And then if you guys don't mind just sharing this podcast with somebody, if you enjoyed it or found it good, like found the information good, if you guys don't mind just sharing it with a friend, that would be sweet. And if you guys are looking for coaches, we are always trying to take on more athletes. So if you guys would like some help prepping for this next season, maybe you're trying to break into that quarterfinal spot, or you were kind of a bubble semifinals, or if you guys are just looking to get healthy, we would definitely love to be able to help. So yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for coming on, Matt. We'll catch you guys next time.
That's it.